Carl Jung's Archetypes focus on the patterns that have defined humanity's existence in our collective unconscious, particularly the stories we tell. Archetypes are technically infinite, but there are ones that we can focus on that encompass most aspects of human behavior, especially when it comes to media. Each archetype has their shadow part, which is essentially when the archetype gets out of balance and becomes maladaptive. In real life, we all embody multiple archetypes and their shadows. In media, this can also be the case, but a character can also strongly embody a singular archetype. In the case of this brief analysis, we will be focusing on Commander Shepard, Liara, Garrus, Wrex, and Sovereign. The characters in Mass Effect 1 are only going through part of their arcs, none of them are necessarily complete, and a lot of characters become a lot more three-dimensional in the next games. I will make reference to these arcs in the later games when I feel it adds substance to the analysis, but for the most part I will focus on what's contained in Mass Effect 1. This is also a brief analysis. I will not be diving into a lot of things, that's maybe for a future video. I hope you will gain a greater appreciation of the characters explored here, because I certainly did when writing this. That being said, spoilers for the entire Mass Effect trilogy follow. We already encounter something interesting off the bat. Shepard is not a typical hero. In most media, the hero undergoes a hero's journey and is able to grow quite a bit through the events of the story. They gain confidence, they gain intelligence, they gain heart and emotion. Shepard is already in a somewhat powerful state. He's in the N7 program, so his skills are elite, and he is thrust into the position of commander. And as we see, he actually excels at it in little to no time. Shepard's role is really about gathering allies, resources, the brawn, the brains, and acting as a central point to glue them together and give them direction. The player expression is what defines Shepard more than anything, but his role is essentially unchanged. In Mass Effect 2 and 3, he goes through much more of a typical hero's journey, but that's out of scope for this video. If the Normandy is an individual, Shepard would be the king, or the ego. The king archetype rules over the land, all the other archetypes serve under him, so it's rather easy to pin him down, especially because he's rather one-dimensional in Mass Effect 1. Liara is complex. She boils down to embodying both the sage archetype and a bit of its shadow. The sage fundamentally wants to uncover knowledge and truth and generally uses it for the greater good. You can think of a professor or a scientist. Liara is of course a doctor, so she fits this quite well. She is always seemingly knee-deep in some kind of research, whether it's the dig site you find her on Therum, or in her head when talking to Shepard. It's all about Prothean knowledge for her. However, the sage is often portrayed as a mentor or a wise figure. Liara, while very intelligent and a powerful biotic, is very childlike in a lot of ways. In her words,
I am only 106.
Liara is in no position of mentorship, at least not yet. She's still trying to find her place in the world and is kind of awkward in a lot of ways. She has the intellect, but maybe lacking in some emotional awareness right now. In Jungian terms, she also hasn't developed a persona. A persona is basically just the self we present to the outside world. This is a necessary aspect of society as it helps us navigate the world and all of its social customs. Liara has had no reason to develop a persona. She even distanced herself from her own people, let alone the other races. Her persona develops much more in the next games, and Liara also gets much closer to the wise woman archetype in Mass Effect 3. She not only has the knowledge, but she is there as a sort of rock for Shepard. She has the emotional knowledge and general life wisdom that she doesn't have right now. These are key pillars of the wise woman archetype. But in Mass Effect 1, she's a developing sage, and the other archetype is sort of the shadow of the sage, or the hermit archetype even. I was pondering her being the innocent or the dreamer, but that's not quite it. Her obsession with the work has kept her socially isolated, and she's kind of retreated from the world. The hermit does this and usually gains a better understanding of itself. While I'm not sure if we ever hear Liara speak of this sort of self-discovery, I'm sure in her lifespan it's happened even by the time we have rescued her. Part of the hermit's journey is returning to the world with its newfound knowledge, and well, she kind of does exactly this when we rescue her. The shadow of the sage has their obsession with knowledge dampen their other aspects as well. This is partly why Liara hasn't developed a persona and is missing some emotional intelligence. The sage's shadow can often represent as arrogance as well, which Liara definitely does not embody. So she's kind of embodying a few different things here. I'm not sure if I'm missing something, maybe one of you guys would know. Garrus is a pretty typical warrior. He's Shepard's right-hand man, he's handy with snipers, assault rifles, he's a strategist. Basically, when it comes to tactical combat, Garrus is your guy. The warrior archetype is characterized by going on the offense and getting things done. The warrior also serves the greater good. The warrior serves under the king as a tool for action. Garrus' main struggle in Mass Effect 1 is morality versus regulations. Garrus is fed up with C-Sex regulations. He's wondering whether the regulations even matter if the job can get done in a much more efficient way without them. This is where King Shepard can influence him. You can push him to disregard the rules and focus on the job, or reinforce the importance of the rules. Now, I'm not going to get into the minutiae of C-Sex regulations, but this perfectly captures the struggle of the warrior. The drive for results can make you disregard other things, and generally, regulations are to be respected. For example's sake, we can replace the regulations with someone's feelings or the law to understand the struggle in more simple terms. Morality versus efficiency. Will my obsession with getting things done hurt others or get me in legal trouble? One of the shadow parts of the warrior is the sadist, who enjoys the power he can enact and lets it consume him, and the other is the masochist, which is sort of a warrior without confidence, and he's kind of passive-aggressive and it comes out in weird ways. I don't think Garrus fits either of these two that well. He's so concerned with results that we actually see him go down the vigilante path in Mass Effect 2. At the end of the day, the bad guys cannot walk free. It's not about power, it's about results, which for Garrus is his version of the greater good. That's what makes these archetypes and their shadows a bit twisted. They always think they are doing the right thing. Wrex is a rebel. I mean, he literally left Tuchanka for opposing its way of life and its ruler. He is the renegade. The rebel is defined by being a rule breaker and changing the status quo. He's a reckless warrior, as are most Krogan. Unlike Garrus, the Krogan warriors do lust for a bit of blood and glory. Their way of life on Tuchanka demands aggression. If Garrus is a precision rifle, picking his targets, lining up his shots, executing tactics, Wrex is a shotgun. Point it in a general direction, shoot, and do as much damage as you can. This is also literally reflected in their weapon kits. We can see the pitfalls of this sort of life as Wrex sees it. Even on a galactic scale, the galaxy fears the Krogan. The thing is, this is a positive trait for Krogan. It's not really a character flaw per se, or a shadow part that's in control. It's just what the environment is demanding. There is the sadist, who is a shadow of the warrior who has a lust for power. This is sort of true of the Krogan, but not entirely. It's not power in the sense of ego, but more so as a sense of survival. You need to be powerful to survive. Wrex doesn't care about power to feed his own ego. He didn't try and turn the status quo with Krogan way of life for his own gain. He genuinely cares about the future of his people. This is not a power play for him. So we can't really classify him as a sadist. Everything he does do for the greater good. I also toyed with the idea of him embodying the destroyer archetype, which is another shadow, who destroys from a place of nihilism, which again, Wrex doesn't really embody that either. He isn't hopeful about the future of the Krogan, but I don't think his view qualifies as nihilism. His view of the Krogan only fuels the rebel part of him that wants to do better. I don't think he fully embodies the shadow of a particular archetype, but has small aspects of the shadow parts of the warrior. The Krogan aggression isn't maladaptive for Krogan on Tuchanka, but it becomes maladaptive when they interact with the rest of the galaxy. In a sense, Wrex has the least amount of shadow because the parts we see of him are his true self. It's just that they're so incompatible at times with social norms and the laws of the galaxy that it creates friction. Now, the one that inspired me to make this video. Sovereign. The sovereign archetype is the king who is for the prosperity of every part, the one at the head. So it kinda doesn't make sense that the main villain Reaper of Mass Effect 1 is called Sovereign. There's some delicious irony here. So, does a Sovereign want to wipe out all organic life? Well, of course not. And this is what makes his name so interesting to me. Sovereign is not a sovereign at all, and neither are any of the other Reapers. Instead, the Reapers embody the tyrant. The reason it's called Sovereign is because the tyrant is a shadow of the sovereign. Typically, the tyrant is insecure about its own sovereignty and weaknesses and rules by being generally destructive and has some sort of obsession with control. Look at what the Reapers do. And again, I'm only going to focus on ME1 here, because if we take into account what we learn in ME3, especially the Leviathan DLC, this video would be getting huge and there's just much more analysis to do. But in Mass Effect 1, when talking to the Sovereign, he says that the reasons they do what they do are beyond comprehension. This is actually a textbook example of what a shadow part could say as a line of defense. The parts in the shadow cling to any reason. It doesn't care about being logical or clear. In fact, it uses logic as a defense to justify its existence and actions. In this case, Sovereign the Tyrant gives a non-answer. Oh, you wouldn't understand. You are beneath me.
I am beyond your comprehension. I am sovereign.
We all know people who will answer things like this in real life from a perceived throne. The tyrant knows there are holes in its logic and reasoning and cannot bring them into the light in an honest manner for fear of losing its control and power. The Reapers cannot be reasoned with. They cannot give an honest answer because they are not willing to accept an honest rebuttal.
Does this unit have a soul?
Lastly, we will skip ahead to the very end of the trilogy. I know it's a bit sudden, but trust me, there's a reason for this. A surface-level analysis when looking at the galaxy through the lens of archetypes, out of the 3 endings, synthesis seems to fit the general theme of most of Jung's work. Jung said the most important relationship you'll ever have is the relationship to yourself. What he describes as individuation is integrating or joining these parts of your psyche that are in the shadow back into the self. That's what shadow work is. If someone embodies the shadow of the warrior where they become obsessed with power, as long as that part is being ignored and is in shadow, it will control you. The work you do is facing the shadow and trying to understand why it's there. It's a part of you that is not yet integrated. This makes the ending of Mass Effect 3 quite an easy choice with a Jungian lens. Synthesis is the ultimate integration of organic and synthetic life. What if the Reapers weren't these shadow tyrants? What if we were all the same? The galaxy and every life form would be one functioning self where the shadow of the galaxy's psyche is now integrated. There is no fighting, there is only ultimate understanding. Through this thematic lens, this ending is interesting to think about. While I personally pick Destroy if we look at the situation from a practical lens, a Jungian lens means you cannot destroy parts of your psyche. That's a miscalculation by the ego. You think you can, but you will just repress those parts more and push them more into shadow. They will have even more control over you than they did before. I'm not really sure how to view control, but the closest thing I can think of is some sort of disassociation or split personality. Shepard, or the King, takes control of the Tyrant and uses it to help rebuild the mass relays and such. However, Shepard isn't really there, right? There is no human connection, so the problem is solved, but the self and the psyche are still split. No humanity is left in the soul, which to me is a huge problem. And that's my analysis. I left out a lot of characters, parts of the lore, and the story, but that's why I call this a brief analysis. I really want to do a similar analysis on Mass Effect 2, so maybe that will be another video. I'm still learning these Jungian concepts, so hopefully I represented them accurately here. If I didn't, or if you have more to add, I'd love to know what you guys think in the comments below. Thanks for watching.